Oh yeah. Oh wait, I have my.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, fractal
Round
Bitcoin, the
panel.
Bitcoin panel.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Uh huh. That's
Oh
Barry,
yeah.
by the way. I have all these sound clips. But anyway, everyone,
Beautiful.
welcome. We're glad you're here. We've assembled the most geeked up, savage Bitcoiners you've ever seen in your life, you've ever heard. Everyone you see on the screen, even the people you don't see, are certifiable. That's how crazy they are. And we love this, right? AC. I mean, look, you're standing in front of a nice, looks like you're in a nice home, but you're a maniac, aren't you?
Audible, headphone level.
Yeah, my top three things are Bitcoin, bullets, and beer. So you can kind of see that all in my bar.
Whoa. I know
The
Walter
three
X
Bs.
is foaming at the mouth right
Yeah.
now.
Slightly.
So also Nick is here. Nick, you live close to us. So three of us are. I'm not going to say where because. But
Which FEMA region?
we're in.
We're in the same FEMA region.
Oh Jesus, Northern Alaska. That's where we are actually. So let's get into the news. I mean, what have you guys been seeing in the news that's crazy?
Everything?
I was gonna say gestures vaguely.
I know, but Bitcoin. All right, but we're not going to talk about ETFs. Okay, is that okay?
that please, dear Lord. As in,
I was
please
gonna
don't.
say, ETFs are just noise. So I hope we don't get into it. So it sounds like we got consensus already.
Right?
The registration for Bitcoin miners, that was the one that I saw this week that was like, ooh. So by the way, I am a software developer and have any of you heard of SAS mining?
Yeah, Mickey just went over there.
Yeah, so I'm over there part-time right now.
Oh.
But anyways, so I was asking the CTO what his thoughts were on some of this today. But yeah, that's the one that I'm like, man, is it time to like leave the States?
Is that just a proposal or is that a legit thing now?
So my understanding is they have 6 months they're calling it, what was the nomenclature was kind of funny because it's like a mandatory self-report. It's like, what do I want to say? Anyways, yeah, but it basically you have to hand over geolocation, number of rigs, serial numbers of rigs. Like it's pretty intrusive. And why? Because apparently Bitcoin mining is a potential risk to the energy grid when we kind of know that's the opposite.
Is that
That's
something
wild.
they're trying to? Oh yeah, sorry. I was just gonna ask.
Go
Is
ahead.
that something? Is that something that they're trying to like get home miners to do as well? So if you like bought a miner, they want you to like hand in that, or is it just for like large scale?
Commercial operations is my understanding.
Yeah.
It's still pretty.
Yeah, I think it was publicly traded.
Okay, that's still pretty intrusive because I was thinking if they're trying to like make home miners do that, then my reaction would be, I mean, I still don't think it's great, but if they try to force that on the home miners, it's going to be not good.
Yeah, I don't know how this is even going to be enforceable, but yeah, through the U.S. Energy Information Administration. So it was news to me. I'd never even heard of them before, but because I've heard of the U.S. Department of Energy, but
The Bitcoin police are coming.
yeah, it's all right if it's proof of stake mining though. They differentiate you there.
Wait, seriously? So there's just like a carve out for proof of stake?
Yeah, so basically you go through like page 1 and 2 of the request for information, and it like page 2, if you are proof of stake, you just basically can stop there and say, oh, I don't need to report any additional information.
Wow, yeah, I haven't actually haven't actually read the full report, but that's asinine.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So that was the big news topic I heard this week. That was like, oh,
How much of this do we think is just like to try to discourage new people from getting into it?
I don't know.
It plays into it, right? Don't you think?
Definitely.
Let's kind of kill the market before it gets too big and make people feel like, the boogeyman's coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's that whole like game of trying to put regulatory burden on people. So, it makes you want to not. It's kind of weird too, because it almost has. I mean, maybe this is just my own brain, but it seems to have an opposite effect. So, like, instead of being like, oh yeah, we want to comply, like it forces people to do things like kind of in the underground, for lack of a better way of saying it. Because if you're like a mid or a small size miner, yeah, I mean, I guess if this only applies to publicly traded companies, then it's. I don't know. They already have a bunch of regulatory burden on them already, but it just makes the barrier to entry that much more annoying.
yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily publicly traded, because we were talking about this at SAS mining, and the implications of that. So I think it's more if you're a commercial mining operation, publicly traded or not. At least that's my understanding. I'm sure they're going to have a lawyer look at all this to further confirm what's actually needed or not. But
Yeah, the interesting part with that is if you zoom out and you look at like what happened in China in 2021, does it really affect, the Bitcoin network, the Bitcoin protocol? Sure, it's going to dip, hash rate's going to drop if people choose to vote with their feet and leave the United States. But overall, in the grand scheme of things, it's not really going to change or affect Bitcoin. And like others have said, it might just motivate people to, start positioning and posturing for that eventual move elsewhere. And what that really does is take creativity and innovation offshore and put us further behind as the United States in this, new and emerging innovation that personally I think everyone should adopt and consider at least a small allocation, if not a large allocation of, their overall wealth.
Right. Yeah. Worst come to worst, we have like a slower blocks for a couple weeks. Oh no.
Yeah.
I was talking to a buddy the other day about my miners, and this is a good example about how early we are. He and this is a smart guy who operates on people. He said like he actually thought my miners were physical people that were somehow searching and digging for Bitcoin. Had no idea they were servers. It kind of blew my mind he believed this. I thought he was joking at first.
That's hilarious. You got a bunch of people stuffed in a room doing math manually.
You could make like funny videos where a bunch of us dress up like physical miners and like we're going into a cave, and a reporter like, hey, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're going in here to mine Bitcoin.
Oh, Pa, exactly. I got the orange lung.
The dust. That dust. What is the dust stuff, AC? We were talking at the meeting the other day. It's like little bits of Bitcoin.
It's basically, small amounts of sats or satoshis that eventually become unspendable based on the fees required to transact on layer one, on the base layer.
Right. That's interesting. So I wanted to bring this up real quick because I did my episode earlier today was I discussed the 7 misleading, bogus criticisms of Bitcoin that the state disseminates to bolster its fiat propaganda. Yes! Come on! All right, and the first one is Bitcoin has no intrinsic value. This critique argues that Bitcoin is purely digital and backed by nothing, and therefore has no intrinsic value. The rebuttal to this is Bitcoin's value is derived from its scarcity, security, and decentralization, which are all valuable properties. I mean, look, I'm curious what you guys say to this. The first thing that I thought of was like, and I know this isn't specific to Bitcoin, but like whatever we say is valuable to a certain degree, right? Like it's almost like if we all agree that something is valuable, then we all believe it's valuable. But if half the people start to believe, no, that's not valuable, then whatever. But let's talk about what is the intrinsic value of Bitcoin. How do we talk to people who just say, oh, there's no intrinsic value?
I'll jump on this one first. And typically I just agree with them. Like if you look at the definition of intrinsic value, it has the ability to be used other than as a form of money. People always look at gold and they say it could be used in electronics or jewelry. Okay, sure, it has intrinsic value. And that's like the book answer. That's the book nerd answer. But in practical terms, it has a ton of intrinsic value. Like you said, it's backed by, absolute provable scarcity. 21 million is all that there will ever be. It's backed by a massive wall of energy. It's backed by cryptography, and it's decentralized across the entire globe. So you can take your pick. Do you want it to be used as jewelry or something else? Or do you want leveraging technology to support the back end of Bitcoin? And so if I agree with them and they shut up so I don't have to listen to them anymore talk about stupid intrinsic value, good. If they don't get it, they don't get it. They'll eventually get it at the price they deserve.
Right.
It also can't be manipulated like every other currency out there, which, I mean, has Bitcoin been hacked yet? How many years? 10 years going on?
15.
It's pretty rock solid. But like, what else even compares? I can't think of it.
Yeah, I mean, I just finished reading the Bitcoin Standard for the first time, and when he talks about hard money versus soft money, I mean, and how societies flourish when there's actually hard money, like under the gold standard, society flourished from 1870 to 1910 because the money was solid. But in the fiat world, when the money's not solid, then there's just a bunch of shenanigans happening, and it's like there's no footing, there's no base, right?
Yeah, I mean, gold isn't as corrupt as the U.S. dollar, obviously, but it's still got its own corruptions. There's people doing market manipulation and things of this nature. The same, the diamond market, and they've got, they artificially hold back diamonds from being released into the market. So, even these things that we think are a little bit maybe less messy compared to, the dollar of some country, it still blows that stuff away.
Yeah,
right?
Diamonds are a scam. As someone who grew up in the jewelry industry, diamonds are a freaking scam.
Right? Because they can't even. Didn't the cubic zirconia get so good? Now it's really hard to tell real diamonds from fake.
True.
I mean, you still can, but I mean, they have gotten pretty damn good.
Well, and even like naturally occurring diamonds, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's diatremes up in the Canadian Shield that I think De Beers went through, and they were just buying up whole swaths of land so that nobody else could mine the diamonds that they knew were there.
Yeah, I don't know about that specifically, but it sounds accurate enough.
Yeah, I mean, and I was looking for the quote about Bitcoin that Satoshi put out, and it was basically like, imagine something that had all the properties of money but had no other properties of gold. And actually, in some ways, it becomes more useful as a form of money because gold has these other subjective values to it that something like Bitcoin doesn't. And anyways, I'm paraphrasing terribly. But ultimately, everything has the subjective value to it, and it really is. It's what do we place it? What sort of value do we place on a currency?
I mean, even the American dollar is maybe the most legit. I don't know. Legit's a bad word. A safe in general place to put your money, but even that, your value is decreasing pretty rapidly. In 100 years, your $100 is going to be worth $1, maybe if you're lucky.
Yep.
Assuming we
Bitcoin,
last
I don't
another
think
100
does
years.
that. Yeah.
All right, the second one here is the government will shut down Bitcoin. And I argued that this is really not possible. But what do you guys think? Number two here, what do you guys think?
I mean, they would literally have to cut internet cables to the entire world to shut it down, and even then, we still have. I mean, I don't know how far Blockstream's gotten into it because I haven't actually used their stuff. But I mean, shit, we got satellites relaying blocks. So I mean, they could make it really darn hard to use, that's for sure. But like, it would also be at a large detriment to, I mean, global internet infrastructure. They would really have to neuter the entire world, or whatever government decided to shut down Bitcoin. They would pretty much have to neuter the world to do it, because I mean, we're transacting over the internet. So yeah.
Let's also not forget that most governments own a lot of Bitcoin.
That's true.
I know. U.S. is on number 4 on the list. This U.S. owns the 4th most out of any, private entity.
I was going to say they're not going to shut it down because it benefits them. They might not like it because they can't control it as well, but I mean, they'll definitely try. But ultimately, it benefits them too. So
Yeah.
It's just hard. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say a country can only ban itself from Bitcoin.
yeah, I think I saw a comic recently. I forget the name of the person who does these little kind of cartoony doodles of Bitcoin concepts, but it was someone being like, "Oh yeah, I'm banning Bitcoin," and they just build a wall around themselves. Yeah, I really wish I could remember that artist's name, because it's great. Great. I'm gonna see if I can find that. It's great little Bitcoin concept comics, but yeah.
I think I saw Relay reposted that on Twitter also.
I mean, the power of the Bitcoin network is just insane. I don't think we can even really put it in our mind's eye anymore. It's just, I don't even know what the last figure I read was, but how many gigajoules we're talking. I mean, it's crazy. Largest, most powerful network in the history of the world, right?
Also, how are you going to another fun point too is there's been some work recently. I don't know how much you guys pay attention to like mesh networking or anything like that, but there's this newer network that at least I recently stumbled upon called Reticulum, and somebody built a cashew wallet to send cashew payments over Reticulum, and it's its own networking stack. So you can essentially send Bitcoin. I mean, I think like NVK and other people have done it, or a couple other people have done it, where they send Bitcoin transactions via ham radio. But this is essentially like another form of sending, as long as you have a node running and there's some form of consensus going on, you can still send Bitcoin transactions via handheld ham radio style devices. Like, shut that down.
Yeah, that's too much. I mean, come on. All right, Bitcoin is too volatile. I don't know, that's a weird well, look, okay, I want to ask you guys this. When I think of Bitcoin, and this has been forever since I got into Bitcoin, I've always thought of it as a long-term store of value. Like, I'm not going to sell for at least 10, 15, 20 years, whatever. Like I'm not even considering when I might sell yet. I'm 10 years away from even considering it. So for me, the volatility, I don't really mind, because, it still keeps going up and to the right. But I guess people who trade daily, they're worried about volatility, or I mean, I understand, like, if you get paid your salary in Bitcoin and then a bear market happens and you lose 80% of your value. I get that. What do you guys think about that? The volatility?
Well, it can be tough if you're a miner like I am. So when the price dips down to a point where my cost for my provider, my monthly bill, is more than what I'm making, it's not very fun. And actually got so bad that they just voluntarily said, "Hey guys, we're just going to shut down operations for a few months," when things were really bad, in the 15,000, 16,000 area, which was actually great that they did that, because we would all just been throwing money away. Spend 20,000, 10,000 is kind of stupid. So it does impact that kind of thing for sure.
I was actually thinking about. Sorry, go ahead, AC.
I was going to say, a lot of times I hear the volatility argument from like no coiners and pre-coiners, and I always refer them back to like the 200-month weekly or 200 weekly moving average. It smooths it out. It paints a better picture. And then the other piece of it is, as long as we continue to denominate Bitcoin in fiat terms, and most of us probably, that denominator is US dollars. And like we talked about earlier, it's a manipulated system where we print more money introduced into the system. It's going to look volatile. We're still early enough where we're going to see 20-point swings up and down, 50. I don't think we'll ever see another 80-point swing or a percentage swing. But I always tell people to try to zoom out if possible. Like Walter mentioned, there are some people out there, a lot of people out there with massive skin in the game, and that volatility is a lot closer to home. But for folks who are on the periphery, they have the ability to kind of smooth out those bumps a little bit better than those that are closer to the generation of new Bitcoin and mining Bitcoin.
I was going to say, as someone who uses Bitcoin on almost a daily basis, like buying whatever I can, like my basics with Bitcoin, I definitely like it when the dollar value is up, because that means my sats stretch a little bit further, at least because, like you said, a lot of people still denominate things in dollars. So the sats price will swing on a daily basis. And I do like it when I get, more for my sats, but at the same time, and granted, this is just for myself, and everyone has their own personal mindset, but I really try not to think about price, because I or at least I think about it differently. I think about it as more of an exchange rate, I guess, rather than like
value, right?
Yeah, rather than like as value, because I'm using it so often, I guess. It's like, okay, if I go to the US, I can get, I don't know what the current price is, but it's like whatever, I can get 2,300 sats for my dollar, or I can go somewhere else and get I don't know, fucking 20,000 sats for for whatever their currency is or something. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, kind of. I was trying to like formulate a thought as I was speaking, and it didn't turn out so well. But
Well,
yeah,
I think
right. Point taken.
yeah, the volatility thing just seems like a weird fiat argument. That it's like, I mean, if you're thinking mostly in dollars, and if you have businesses, then sure, yeah. I don't know. Sorry, I'll shut up.
Makes sense. Go ahead, Nick.
Well, I was going to say, I think there's, like, you look at a lot of countries where, an average income for a week is $100 or less. And that 80% swing can mean a lot, right?
Right.
I mean, that can literally mean the difference between putting food on the table or not. So I can understand the need. It's like holding on to the melting ice cube, where, okay, it's like, I know I'm going to be spending most of this in this next week, so it's not that big of a deal. But if that 80% swing happens, or 20% or whatever during the week, yeah, that's going to suck.
Right.
But then you look at other countries where, Turkey, for example, or Venezuela, where they have experienced rampant inflation and their currency is being devalued 80% in a week. And so it's like, I don't know. In a lot of ways, we're pretty fortunate to be like denominating most things still in the US dollar.
Right.
But I know for me, like the long-term store of value is Bitcoin. I'm pretty much like paying off whatever bills I have at the beginning and the end of each month, and or the middle of the month, and then everything else is swept into sats. So I mean, it's but yeah.
Another point too is Bitcoin is arguably the most revolutionary technology of our lifetimes. Shouldn't it be volatile? If it wasn't volatile, something's wrong.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if it stayed the same all the time, then like, yeah, there's nothing going on with it.
And the whole world has turned volatile. I mean, we can't even agree what a man or a woman is anymore. So I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially when new things come out, it's always like the fringe kind of crazier people who are the first adopters, right? Like the masses don't accept something in the beginning. So I think that also causes volatility, because it's just people adopt things at different speeds, and then that adoption rate contributes. Yeah.
Well, it's a whole different. Oh yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's a whole different way of like, thinking and operating. Like you said, people are used to working in this broken system. Something I was actually talking about the meetup the other day, or last night. It seems that like a lot of people know that there's a problem and know that something is broken, but they don't necessarily have the education or the like frame of mind to like describe the problem, you know? So like, you know, they'll bitch about, you know, how, you know, the bag of chips they bought went up $1, you know, over the last 6 months or something like that. And they write, you know, they you know, they see stuff like that, but they don't have the vocabulary to describe what's causing the problem. I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, I think that's 100% makes sense. Like, I think for me, Bitcoin opened my eyes to really learning about money and monetary systems. It's not something that we're taught in school, but it's definitely part of the rabbit hole, at least the path that I took going down the rabbit hole. And then you start to discover like inflation, debasement, fractional reserve lending and banking and all of these things. And then you start to build that vocabulary, like you'd mentioned, about how to describe what's wrong with the current system. But if it weren't for Bitcoin, I would have never learned a fraction
same.
of those things.
I was completely uninterested in banking until like
Yeah.
probably like 2016 or so, when I really started to, you know, read about economics and whatnot. And then I was like, oh, you know, everything just, you know, after granted, you know, 6 months of reading, I was like, oh, it clicks. I get it now.
It can be tough to get Bitcoin. I mean, myself, even as a technologist, I had a coworker a decade ago who was mining. He had hundreds of Bitcoins. I just, I just didn't get it. I thought it was just silly, goofy, geeky, digital BS. You know, I didn't even spend an afternoon to take the guy out to lunch to dig his brain. I mean, I could be worth so much more money had I not been so pig-headed. And I think, you know, back then, about who I was very much more of a normie, for lack of a better term. Like, I believed a lot of things I totally disbelieve now about the world and our political system and so many other things. And I think that's part of it too. I think some people, their blinders are just too on. They're just locked down too much. They haven't escaped the matrix enough to really even dig into this stuff.
Yeah, and it makes sense.
I love
mean,
Jeff Spook.
go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, it's exactly the way that Jeff Booth describes it. You know, when you're in the system, it's hard to evaluate the new and emerging system when you're stuck inside. And so Bitcoin allows people, I think, Bitcoin allows people to take a step out of the matrix, see the system for what it really is, and see the potential of a new and emerging system.
Yeah, and I think individuals in their own lives, they're so preoccupied with smaller day-to-day things like survival, like food and this and like, and you know, taking a shower and caring for kids. Like there's like the average person doesn't have all this time to sit around and study, you know, money and the history of these things and these governments. I call it the cartel because the government's just the cartel to me, right? But that's what they want. They want the people arguing and worrying about little stuff so they don't see the big con that's happening, right? And so it takes people time. I mean, look, I started when Laura Shin started her show, Unchained. I was her producer in 2016. And it wasn't for 2.5 years later, that's when I got into Bitcoin. So I can't explain that. It's very similar to you, Walter. Like I guess my brain just didn't get it for a while, even though I was listening to her, producing her show every week and hearing those guests talk. Although she's not like, she's more of like she talks more generally about Bitcoin, not like as in investing, and not that it's like a world changing thing. She was just more reporting on news. But still, I could have got in way earlier too. But again, I guess it just. That's what happens.
Better late than never, I guess.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I read the Bitcoin Standard, I don't think it really made more sense to me.
Yeah, I was being a degenerate when I first figured out what Bitcoin was, and I had beyond the technology and the fact that I could use it for pseudonymous payments, I knew genuinely nothing about it. And I started mining, and I want to say like 2015-ish, played around with it because I thought that would be interesting. Ended up spec mining shit coins for a while.
Yeah.
yeah, and then like I said, then I started reading about economics and like 2016ish, and I was like, oh crap, like it's actually really cool.
Right. Let's talk a little bit more about this energy, wasting energy, because I know like Bitcoin is becoming more and more, well, it's using more and more renewable energy, stuff like that. In fact, I looked at some graph, and I think in Canada it's like 70% of the energy going into Bitcoin is like renewable energy or something, and maybe that's because they don't have much mining happening at all. I don't know, but this is one way that the cartels criticizes Bitcoin. Oh, it just uses way too much energy. I don't know. When I read the Bitcoin standard and I guess understanding Bitcoin a little more, it's like that amount of energy is the thing that keeps Bitcoin what it is, right? Like you need, like that's what keeps it secure. And by the way, I'm still relatively new at talking about Bitcoin, so a lot of times I'll be talking and I don't know the words, and but the energy, like look, the whole climate thing, right? We know they're going to be coming, they're going to keep harping on that. So what do you tell people who complain about the energy usage?
I think it's. Oh,
Go ahead. Man. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the majority of Bitcoin mining is trending towards what we would consider stranded energy sources. So, and a lot of times renewables, you have peak and off peak loads for energy consumption. And the nice thing about Bitcoin mining is miners can turn off, and a lot of them will have agreements with energy producers about when they can turn on, or they'll, if peak load comes up and they're like, hey, can you turn off X amount of your facility? It actually helps stabilize the grid in a lot of ways. And I think that's something that's often missed. And like I say, these stranded energy sources as well. So, I mean, you have everything from like methane farms that before maybe that was just being flared straight into the atmosphere, whereas now you can actually hook up something that for a lot of these places they can earn some revenue from, and you're still flaring that gas, but you're actually getting revenue from it. So that's a form of stranded energy, right? Gridless is another situation. So they operate out of Africa, and I'm going to do a bad job of talking about this too, but they actually have agreements with, I think most of it's hydroelectric. So a lot of these like small town, what we would not even call a town really, they can put in a small hydroelectric dam. They'll be earning revenue from the mining operation, specifically like at off peak hours, so at night and during the day. But it incentivizes putting in infrastructure where you normally wouldn't put infrastructure, because these small locales, there's just not enough people there. But it affords them the ability to generate electricity and in turn mine Bitcoin. So to me, that's one of the biggest pieces of FUD.
Yeah. Isn't there also a company in the U.S., maybe this is gridless? I don't think it's gridless, but there's kind of like you were talking about with stranded energy. There's a company in the U.S. that's taking like abandoned coal mining sites and burning the residual coal and like cleaning up those areas that are ultimately toxic, and doing it by burning this coal to mine Bitcoin.
Oh, I'm sure.
I feel like a dummy because I forget the name of the company. They're one of the publicly traded miners, but
yeah. No, I think it's something that we're going to see more and more of, is these like alternative, like what we would consider alternative energy sources that aren't real consistent, maybe, but Bitcoin, like you throw in the economic incentive of hooking a Bitcoin mining operation up to it, and we've actually just turned this into something very profitable. And I don't know, humanity's built around energy, right? I mean, everything from ooga booga, I'm rubbing two sticks together and I made a fire, to let's the internal combustion engine. I don't know. I mean,
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
have you?
Bitcoin's basically. Go ahead.
Oh no. I was just gonna ask mostly if you'd read a book called Energy and Civilization by Vladimir Semel. I probably mispronounced his name, but basically it's a good book about like the history of energy use, and he does like some future predictions. But it basically talks, as a society grows, we need to use more energy, not less. It's just been like as humans grow as a more complex societies, we use more more energy.
I mean, Bitcoin's stored energy and stored compute, and it's really no different than all of the energy used at AWS's servers is just being stored and used as in a monetary function. Nobody's complaining about all the energy they're using. It's just a ridiculous argument. Plus, the points about all the renewable use are also a really good point. But I mean, if I want to spend $500 a month air conditioning my house, whose business is it of yours? It's a freedom issue as well. Nobody's forcing me to mine. I'm doing it on my own.
That's how you can tell that the cartel is trying to just thwart individual freedom, is because what they're saying makes no sense. Like, oh, Bitcoin uses too much energy. Yeah, well, so does a million other things, but you're not going after them. It's just they pick and choose, and
what
it's really
backs up
stupid.
What powers the it's not energy, it's guns and planes and bombs, and that's what backs up the US dollar. Which one's worse?
Good question.
People mining in their homes, obviously.
Yeah, for people who are like adamant about the energy, I really like the work that Daniel Batten has put together. If you guys have seen it, he likes to say fight FUD with facts, and he actually does the legwork and the homework, highlighting. And I think his latest research showed that over 54% of all Bitcoin mining around the world is sustainable, renewable energy. He's even gone so far as to say that it's going to be the poster boy for the ESG movement, because no other industry reaches that level of consumption of renewable and sustainable energy. And then to Nick's point, I really love what Gridless is doing. There was a video that Alex Gladstein, I think, put out, Stranded, not too long ago. And the biggest takeaway for me is that Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining allows energy to be, or it allows energy production to focus on Bitcoin as the buyer of first resort and not always the buyer of last resort. And then curtailment allows them, as that village or that community continues to grow, they can curtail mining and move on to another location. So really, that the ability to produce stranded energy at locations that otherwise wouldn't have it, that's a net good for the entire population, for the entire society, for all of humanity. And I think a lot of people miss that message when all they think about is, how much energy it consumes, without even comparing it to anything else.
And it reminds me of El Salvador, because I know there's a company in El Salvador called Volcano Energy, but in El Salvador, are they really tapping into the energy of a volcano? Is that correct? I actually don't know.
Sounds cool.
I've heard that many times. I just never. I was trying to look for it online, but
I mean, mining with geothermal would be sick, but I don't know if they're actually doing that.
Yeah, I don't know the exact situation where they're at with that. And I know in around there too, there's Bitcoin Lake too. So they're like using geothermal energy coming out of the lake as well. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there, but once again, it's these stranded energy sources where like you don't have a lot of people around there. So in the past, it's never made a whole lot of sense to put in the infrastructure. But yeah, it's interesting.
There'll continue to be new and new forms of propaganda. When we dispel all these myths, there'll just be new ones. So I think another point to make is like, we don't need to spend so much time worrying about this kind of stuff. It's an unstoppable force. They can't stop it. People that are truly interested in learning, we can spend time with those people and try to help them. But a lot of people it's just going to be a waste of our efforts.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. Endthefud.org. Okay. So to change the subject, I recently saw an article that Argentina is now waiving taxes on Bitcoin. This dude, the president, what's his name? Milei, right? He's what do you guys think about this? Because I personally, I think what El Salvador is doing and what Argentina is sort of doing and moving towards, I think this is great because at least there's some countries that are planting the flag in the ground and saying, yes, we're doing this. What do you guys think?
I'm moving there before I cash out my 401k. That's where all my Bitcoins are. They're all in my 401k, so I don't pay taxes on them now at all until I get old. But if that's the case, I guess I'm moving there.
Sweet.
Because my savings and tax would be enough to buy a decent home for sure. So I'll just buy a casa.
Yeah, I think we're going to run into the sovereign individual playing out, where you're going to have nation states that become more amenable towards people with digital native Bitcoin, right? I mean, if I can put 12 words in my head, get on an airplane, and I've moved my entire net wealth with me, and I'm not paying taxes on it, you know?
Yep.
But you think the U.S. would definitely try to go after me if I did that, right? Wouldn't they? Wouldn't they be able? Because they can track if they know my Bitcoin wallet, they could try to come after me.
Need
but
a really good fake mustache and fake wig.
I was gonna say that's why you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Voting accident.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you avoid KYC like a plague. So
Too late.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think KYC is a boon.
KYC is the real crime.
Yeah. With that said, though, I mean, not all my stack is, but a portion of it. However, I think most people, as they come on to they're going to have KYC. I mean, that's just how most of it is.
Is there a way for people to buy Bitcoins from miners without KYC? Is there who's doing this? Seems like a service we need.
There have been some mining companies. I think like Barefoot Mining was one that they offered like direct sales to people. I mean, granted, I think they have caps on their spending. So if you're buying like 0.5 or like a whole Bitcoin or something, you know, they'll talk to you, or multiple Bitcoin. And so I know some miners are like kind of being like, yeah, you know, we'll sell you our excess or whatever. But that's not every miner, of course.
SaaS mining's so it's basically software as a service without KYC. So as long as you pay for the rig, they install it, start mining, and it's no KYC involved.
I mean, what information do you have to give that SaaS miner?
Email, phone if you want.
Okay. As long as they're not requiring ID or anything.
I've always wondered when I occasionally will sell Bitcoin to pay for my mining hosting fees, and I occasionally wonder, like, shouldn't I be getting paid an excess rate for this? Because these are totally virgin coins. Seems like it should be that way, right? Or am I wrong?
I think that will eventually become true. You know, when there's discussions about the UTXO history of a coin, has it been joined in the past? Is it part of an OFAC list? So on and so forth. Yeah, completely agree. But I think that virgin coins, there is the potential that virgin coins could demand a premium in the future.
It's asinine in my mind, but yeah. I mean, yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
pretty
unfortunately,
asinine.
there's like the theory and then there's real world. And I come across this all the time talking about anarchism. It's like there's anarchism in theory. You can't beat it in an argument. You can't, that's it. That's the truth. That's it. Any statism, you can't stand up to anarchism, theoretically. But then you have the real world in which anarchism is never going to be put into practice as true anarchism because it'll just never happen. There's always going to be psychos who are power hungry and, want to do that. So in the same way, like you're saying, Enki, it's terrible that all this stuff with Bitcoin is going to happen, but that's just like, that's the real world. You're going to have governments and cartels that are going to make us jump through hoops, and it's just a mess, but that's what it is. I guess. All right. On that note,
Real anarchy hasn't been tried yet. That's
Well, I was gonna say, like any
Kinda like
on
what the
paper,
Marxists said.
any on paper ideology. I mean, people are assholes, so you're never gonna get pure communism. You're never gonna get pure socialism, and pure democracy is just crappy mob rule. So I mean, like any ideology, there's yeah, a pure version will never work because people suck, unfortunately.
humans ruin everything. Yeah.
yeah, but that's
Yeah.
why that's why this is a spiritual adventure that we're on. It's not physical. Like the physical world is never going to be perfect. You know what I mean? Like it's always going to have ups and downs, light and dark. Duality is the world of the physical existence, and we're going to have pain and pleasure, everything, and it's just going to keep oscillating. But spiritually speaking, spiritually we can achieve whatever we can achieve through meditation and all that. But in the physical world, it's just this is the plane we're on, and this is the the war we're in, right? Pretty much. So, all right, let's talk about. By the way, do any of you want to shout anything out at all? I mean, I know Walter and Enki probably don't, but anyway. But anyway, yeah. All right. So, what? Going forward, when is the supply crunch going to happen? Because, again, we don't have to talk ETF, but the ETF just happened and blah, blah, blah. And now there's going to be a lot more people getting into Bitcoin, but there seems to be a bunch of Bitcoin here and there that, Grayscale is selling, Coinbase is selling. Like I heard there's like 2 million Bitcoin that are able to be sold, kind of, and whatever. But once that's gone, then the supply shock happens and the price goes up. So you guys know more about you know more about that than me. So what are your thoughts? When are we mooning? I guess that's the question.
Isn't that always the question? When?
It's not about money, Nick.
But when are we all getting Lambos and girlfriends?
Please, I mean, anyone in chat? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this year this year we're gonna head up, right?
When's the happening coming?
April,
420.
end of April. Yeah, 420.
So what's that?
That's the goal.
Anybody going to BitBlock Boom in April in Dallas besides me?
No.
All right, carpool. Okay.
So
Just throwing it out there.
when that happens, tell me what's going to happen to my mining fees.
Your mining fees? What do you mean at the halving?
My earning, yeah.
Yeah, your mining fees are going to stay the same, but your Bitcoin per day or per month is expected to get cut in half. But Chris, to answer your question, I sense the hesitation with the group. I know that I hesitated on jumping on this question, and so I'll kind of fall back on the economics of it, right, and supply and demand. As long as Grayscale and GPTC continue to bleed out, I don't see a massive crunch in supply or scarcity. The other piece of that we don't know are all of the short-term holders and even potentially the long-term holders. They're going to sell into accumulation and price appreciation. There's no way around that. If we look at the history and previous cycles, that has always happened. I think there's currently 1.8 million Bitcoin available on exchanges right now, which doesn't include Grayscale. And so really is the new issuance getting cut in half in April, what's currently available on the exchange, and then what is the demand of the people. I don't think that the ETFs have actually seen real demand yet. What it looks like is for the most part, and there are still there's new money coming in, but what it looks like is a lot of that buying is buying up GBTC that's being sold. So when that stops, we can reevaluate and start to take a look at, hey, what does supply on exchange really look like? And then the last thing is the price is going to be set at the margins. So if long-term holders continue to hold, that price is only going to increase until it gets to a point where somebody is willing to sell. When people study and learn Bitcoin and they understand that it's not just number go up, it's also freedom go up, I think that's when you start to see the real diamond hands and people decide, I'm not ever going to sell this. I would much rather hold on to this and pay, dirty fiat money to pay my bills and pay my house, but I'm going to give this to my kids or my grandkids. That's the perspective that I have, at least.
Makes sense. Yeah, I agree. I think even Jack Spirko on his show, the Survival Podcast, he was talking about, he even said, none of us are even going to be alive by the time Bitcoin really rises to where it's going. Like literally, even our children might not be alive. And I mean, I think it's going to happen. I think it could happen sooner than that, especially with the geopolitical nonsense and the and the whole, the fourth turning, and that this is our world war, right now, which I believe it is. But I think things are going to get so crazy that, and these psychos who are in charge, they're going to just keep pushing it to the limit, and it's going to break. And then and again, this might be hopium talking, but then the people are going to realize, like, yeah, we can't let these psychos run things. And in that case, Bitcoin is the currency. It's the store of value that can serve everyone equally. And so it might happen sooner than later that Bitcoin becomes much, more highly adopted, but we don't know.
Imagine a Bitcoin loving president in America. Imagine what happens.
Yeah,
we're not getting it this time around, but could in theory happen not that far in the future.
Pretty skeptical about that, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We don't know, right? We just don't know. So,
well, it happened to El Salvador. Why can't it happen to us?
yeah, it could. I mean, people are expecting insanity this year. Some people are saying we're not even going to have an election.
Well, I
I
know
mean, they've
a lot
been
of
saying
people
that for the
believe
last
that.
few years.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, we don't know. So
I also know people that think Trump is still somehow secret president. I mean, it's I don't know
Yeah.
how that works, but it's interesting the theory some people have.
Yeah, it takes all kinds, I guess.
Right.
all right, so we're almost out of time, but I wanted to bring up this other idea of layer twos. We have the Lightning Network, and then there's Liquid, and I don't know a lot about these things technically, but I recently got this app on my phone called Aqua. Apparently, it's a new app, and apparently it's Lightning and Liquid and all that. So, if you were, can any of you sort of describe Lightning and Liquid and what an app like that could do? For like, if someone's watching, they don't know much about Bitcoin, maybe they're not even into Bitcoin yet. Like, it'd be nice to talk about these layer twos, because that's how we can transact with Bitcoin day to day, right?
I could, but I'm not a big fan of Liquid. So if anyone wants to talk first, they probably should.
Well, explain why are you not a fan of Liquid?
So if and I was talking about this yesterday at the meetup because we were actually talking about Fediment for most of the time. But if, and please correct me if I get my facts wrong, but I'm pretty sure Liquid, I mean, so it is a separate, it's a side chain, but it's its own separate blockchain. All the fees get paid to Blockstream. So it's essentially just a corpo side chain, and no one, and it's, whatever, it's fine for doing experiments and, whatever, if that's what people want to do. But I think is like in terms of a long-term solution, mainly because it's just a corporate side chain, I don't really think it's going to go anywhere. And honestly, I don't know anyone who actually uses Liquid. I mean, if you look at its blockchain, most of the transactions are empty. Like no one's actually using the side chain. So it's like, sure, they have it running and a few transactions happen every now and then. And also I think Liquid was specifically focused on trying to get exchanges to use it. Was part of the reason they sped up the block time, and then they added a little bit of transaction privacy on top of it. But yeah, no, I'm just not a big fan of Liquid in general. I mean, there are other, I guess I'm just not a big fan of side chains that you have to peg in and out of. So it feels a little bit like a shitcoinery to me, but that's just, I guess, my opinion.
Right. Well, you're comparing it to Lightning, which is individual nodes. It's a decentralized system with individual nodes, and people can run their own nodes. And it's so Lightning is more like Bitcoin, right? In that it's decentralized.
Lightning is Bitcoin. Like Lightning is you actually are transacting with Bitcoin instead of using a side chain, which I think some people don't. At least I've seen, at least on Nostr and whatnot, that there is some misunderstanding. Like it took me a while to wrap my own head around Lightning, and it took me reading the technical details to realize that, oh yeah, no, this is actually Bitcoin that you're using. It's not just some like pegged out IOU. So
yeah, it's a 2-to-2 multi-sig channel between two parties, and it's trustless in the means that it's bound in a HTLC, and so there is a penalty associated with it too. So if somebody attempts to take the funds illegitimately, they are penalized for it.
Yeah, you can send a penalty transaction, and actually, like, it's a little harsh, but you can take their side of the channel.
Yeah, well, and that's fundamentally how it works. So, I mean, so even if your node goes offline, there are watchtower services as well that you can set up so that your node, basically your channel states are being monitored by a watchtower. And if your node even goes offline and you're not online to emit the penalty transaction, the watchtower can do that on your behalf. It's where I kind of wonder about Lightning is if it's going to, as we watch block fees continue to grow, if you're not in Lightning right now, it's going to become even more difficult to open Lightning channels because you're still paying on-chain fees. Same with closures.
I was going to say, I don't know if you saw the whole Mutiny Zeus forced closure debacle that was happening, but
Yep. And I've run both LND and CLN implementations.
I run LND currently. I've been wanting to switch to CLN.
The forced closes when we had the major spikes with the ordinals craze. I had a few forced closes that were I think I was paying like $20-$30 on a channel that maybe had it was like hundreds of thousands of sats in a forced close, because it just apparently the way because CLN versus LND, they had different implementations on how to negotiate fees for closures, and anyways, it was bad. So I mean, I think Lightning is one aspect to scaling. I don't know, like side chains, I mean, block space is limited. There will only ever be so much block space. I don't know if side chains are necessarily an appropriate means of scaling. I think what we're going to see in the long run is Chaumian eCash, whether it be
I'm a big fan of Cashew.
whether it be Fedimints or Cashew, or some other implementation. But as we, I think those auditability is what you run into with eCash.
Yeah, eCash, and I mean, like as much as I like eCash, it doesn't really solve any problems because it just adds the same kind of like custodial centralization problem that Lightning already has. So yeah, like I mean, it's great. It's like a private layer, I guess, that you could that interops with Lightning, but yeah, I don't know. I try not to bash on Lightning too much. I mean, obviously, I run a node, and I know it's not the easiest thing to do, but like, I don't know. I'm still not totally convinced that Lightning's the be all end all solution. There could be something else that comes out that, or like, I mean, and Lightning is still relatively young. Maybe like, I don't know, there'll be a breakthrough in Lightning development that'll make it like less of a hub and spoke style model or something. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yep. Channel splicing is an interesting feature. I know like Phoenix and Eclair, they both allow channel splicing. So that basically means you can recommit a UTXO and add additional liquidity, because that's like managing the liquidity on a Lightning node is something that if you're not akin to or you're not aware of it, it can be like, why is my payment failing now?
Right. Yeah, definitely.
So there's a learning curve. And honestly, I mean, I think like most people, I hate to say it, I think a lot of folks are going to end up with some sort of custodial solution, because
I hate it as well, but I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like Wallet of Satoshi, and yeah, it's a custodial Lightning wallet that's extremely popular around the world. I mean, not so much here in the USSA, but
Yeah, I bought a Raspberry Pi. I bought a Start 9 server, and I meant to set up.
Please don't run a node on a Raspberry Pi.
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna set up my Lightning channel and all that, and like I just never did, because the more I researched it, I was like, I don't know enough about it, and I'm not comfortable doing it. AC, do you have any comments on the Lightning and Liquid and all this?
Yeah, I agree with Nick. And I got this from Bob Burnett over at Barefoot Mining, and he talks about block space and block weight and the inability for, the base chain layer 1 to transact for every single person in the world is going to eventually force people into something else. And right now, whether that's Lightning, Liquid, Fediment, you name it, and there's obviously going to be further development in it. But back to what you had initially started with for your users, I think that the biggest thing with Lightning is it's global, instantaneous anywhere around the world, extremely low fee. You could get down to like 1 or 2 sats depending on the amount that you're sending. And then it's instant final settlement. Your users are probably used to using a credit card, and it seems instantaneous when you swipe it or you tap it at the point of sales terminal. But the reality is it's like 3 or 5 days until it actually settles. Really, all it is an abstraction of fiat and an extension of debt. So if people can start to understand the current system that they're in and realize that there's a newer, better system out there, it's probably going to be something related, or it will be related to Bitcoin and to a layer 2 solution, whether that's today or a layer 2 solution in the future.
Yeah, it makes sense. And you can just, I feel it in Bitcoin that Lightning is good. There's, all the things you guys mentioned there's positives and negatives to everything, but it's like you can just feel the whole industry kind of growing and morphing and figuring out like what is the best solution, and it might even be a new solution, like you just said. So that's pretty exciting. So this has been great. It's been great hanging out. I mean, this is cool that even on a day or even a week where there's really no big news and there's no movement of price, and there's little stories, but I can't wait for the bull run to happen and we have these just ridiculous days with ridiculous candles, because then everybody's energy is up, right? I don't know. I mean, look, we're in it for more than the price, but we're in it for the price too. So, Walter, yes, sir.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Walter. Thank you, Enki, AC, and Nick. Seriously, this was great. Now you guys can put on your resume you were on the very first Bitcoin panel live stream. So, I mean,
I'm honored
I don't
to
know
be
what else.
in such
Yeah.
esteemed company. You guys are all very smart. I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
this was
next
a
time I'll be a
blast.
little bit less hungover.
yeah, I mean, so and you're all welcome back. I'll ping you for next week or whenever, but it's all up to you. And so if you're watching, thanks for watching. As you could see, I'm figuring out how to do this Bitcoin panel, but this is exciting because you guys are just so knowledgeable with so much experience and wisdom in the Bitcoin space. So I really appreciate you all for being here, and don't forget to join our locals group. Oh yeah, baby. Wait, where is it? There it is. Let's go. This is our community here. So it's Fractal Bitcoin on locals. So definitely join the group, and we'll see you next time. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody. I'll end the stream. We can hang out for a second and talk afterwards real quick. But that's it. Thanks everybody. We'll see you next time.
Peace.